You can say hello to people, wish people a Shabbat Shalom. And excuse me, the book is there. And also, if you're joining on Facebook, we would love to know that you're out there. I'm finding that I'm hearing from a lot of people, we love coming to services every week. And I don't know that they're coming to services because they're not joining on Zoom. And it's so nice for me to have a sense of who's out there. So unless you want to be sort of ninja and stealth about it, which I hope you don't, and you're on Facebook, maybe type a hello in the chat just so that your name will come up and we can say hi to you, or at least just know you're here. If you're watching on TOS Live, that's wonderful also. And if you're watching on Brookline Interactive, that's also great. And I would love to hear from you anytime. If you want to send us an email, let us know if you're enjoying our services, any feedback, we're all ears. So it's another week where we probably are feeling like we really need Shabbat. Let's enter in together. Let's take some really deep breaths and some complete exhales. And whatever you need to do to loosen what feels constraining to you right now, loosen your neck. I know it's not a yoga class, but in a way, when we loosen up our bodies, we loosen up our souls. We open up our hearts and we're able to receive. So we all need to receive Shabbat this evening, and I'm so glad we get to receive it together, be together in this way. So I also wanted to share that it's the second day of the month of Shvat. So Tu B'Shvat is going to be on the 15th of the month, and we're on the second day of the month. So it's a new month. Yesterday was Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month. So a sense of newness and possibility. And as we look ahead to the coming week, certainly we're filled with a sense of newness and possibility, and we're certainly filled with a sense of trepidation given recent events. And I'm really aware that we need this Shabbat to sustain us as we go into the coming days so that we can send our sense of peace and calm and well-being out into the world. And we all pray together for a peaceful transition of power this week. And may there be no more violence and bloodshed in our nation's capital or anywhere in the coming days. So with that intention, we'll light our candles. And if you have your candles with you, let us see them in the screen if you're able to do that. And we'll be on page 2 for the candle lighting blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Here's some words written by Rabbi Rami Shapiro about candle lighting. Darkness falls about me, comforting and a bit frightening. It harbors both dreams and demons. I tap it for solace. I flee it for fear. It mirrors that which I so desperately wish to avoid, me. Yet I stand here not to embrace the dark, but to kindle the light, not to close my eyes forever, but to open them this once. I stand amidst the dark and bring forth light, soft, fragile, flickering light, the only light I know, the only light I can bear. I bring it, yet it is not mine. I kindle it, yet it is not me. I am the light bearer only. Where the world is dark with illness, let me kindle the light of healing. Where the world is bleak with suffering, let me kindle the light of caring. Where the world is dimmed by lies, let me kindle the light of truth. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're going to move into Shalom Aleichem on page 24, but I'd like to invite everyone to type in to our chat, if you feel comfortable, just a word or two about how you're feeling so that we can feel more connected to each other, since we don't get to do that informal greeting of one another. How you're feeling, or something, if you haven't been feeling great, if you've been anxious or fearful, something that's helped you. Anything you want to share, we're really happy to virtually hear it by having you share it in the chat. So we're on page 24 as we welcome in angels of peace, and we remember that we really are angels for each other. So when we share how we're feeling and what helps us and how we're feeling, that really actually helps enable us to be angels for one another. Really like seeing what some folks are writing. Feel free to write on Facebook too, because we'll be able to see it afterwards. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mo'echem leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seifchem leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's turn to page 13 for Psalm 96. If only the whole world would sing out, if only the whole world would acknowledge that we are all connected to each other, all a part of the source of life. What a world we would live in. This weekend, of course, we also remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and on his birthday, which I believe is today, his actual birthday, we're going to be talking more about him. But I think of that dream that he had and how that dream is reflected and, of course, originates in so much of our liturgy, so much of our Torah. Shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai, baruchu shemo, basru mi מיום ליום ישועתו ספרו בגויים כבודו בכל העמים נפלאותיו כי גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד נורא הוא על כל אלוהים In Psalm 97, we read the words, Or zarua la tzadik uli lev simcha. Light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the upright. So in thinking about Dr. King, I was thinking about him in the framework of being a tzaddik. So we haven't done this psalm for a while, so thought we'd sing Or zarua together. It's more like a chant, the version I'm going to do. Or zarua la tzadik uleishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik uleishrei lev simcha. Simchu tzadikim ba'adonai והודו לזכר קודשו. שמחו צדיקים באדוני והודו לזכר קודשו. You know, I think one thing that makes a tzaddik, a righteous person, a tzaddik, is that they're able to hold on to the belief that the world as it is right now is not what it must be, and that we have that power to change it. And these words mean, Simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, let the righteous ones rejoice in Adonai, rejoice in God. I think honestly what that means is the righteous dwell within a possibility, within the joy of possibility, that there is something that transcends us all, that gives us the power to lift each other up and to together to create the world we wish to see. So I don't think it's simplistic. Rejoice, you righteous ones, in God. I don't think it's giving us a passive role at all. I think to be a tzaddik and to rejoice in God is to be an active participant in possibility. So we're going to move towards L'chadodi now. And we'll be on page 20 and 21. We'll do verses 1 and 2, 5 and 9. And if you're moved and able to do so, and you can rise and greet the beloved, coming in, welcoming this blessed, beautiful, sacred Shabbat time. How fortunate we are to be able to welcome that in every week. L'chadodi yadai likrat chana enei Shabbat nekabela shamor vezachor lediburecha tishmianu el hamilchad Adonai echad ושמו אחד לשם תפארת ונתינה לך אדוני לקראת חנה הנה שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו ונלחקים מכל הברכה מראש מכן נעשוך סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לילה לך אדוני לקראת חנה הנה שבת נקבלה. Verse 5 התעוררי כי באורך קומי אורי שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נדע לילה לך אדוני לילה לקראת סקלה הנה שבת נקבלה בואי ושלום עצרת פעלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה לילה אדוני לילה לקראת חלה הנה שבת נקבלה. All right, let's have a few sharing out loud Ma Gadlu moments. What caused you to say, wow, that is amazing, in hopefully a positive way this week? Mine was my youngest son turning 7. I definitely can't believe it. Thank you for the birthday wishes I can see on your faces. If you want to share, oh, here we go, John and Mandy. Or not. They came up on the screen. So we're going to spotlight whoever raises. If you raise your hand and wish to share, we're going to spotlight you. I know in this group we have something. And you can unmute yourself.
This is the
hi,
the
John.
wow moment. The wow moment, right?
Yeah. All right.
It was a sunset. I just had my office the place I work at home has a pretty good view of the sunset, and since it happens during work hours, I just get to kind of relax.
All right. Thank you. Eva and Jean.
Well, the blue skies and sunshine yesterday or early today were absolutely spectacular, and I was so disappointed when it clouded over.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else like to share aloud? We're getting a nice example in the chat. Lisa and family went to first day skiing and had beautiful views of Lake Sunapee. It's great. Anyone else? Well, then I'm going to have to throw another one at you. My eldest child is turning 15 on Monday. That's an anticipatory, wow, oh my God, that is not possible. All right, keep it coming. If you want to type in the chat anything that was awesome in the best possible way, if it comes to you, go ahead. We'll sing our Ma Gadlu round, top of page 342. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
Hallelujah.
Magadu, Masechaya,
Hallelujah.
Me'odam ku machshevo May we experience awe and wonder this week, whether it's natural beauty or beautiful historic moment. May we experience it and notice it and allow ourselves to take it in. I don't know which part of the round Hershey was participating in, but you may have heard him bark. I couldn't tell if it was Hallelujah or Magadlu, but he was certain. Sometimes goes off if it gets jolted. All right. When we think about Dr. King, we often, in a Jewish context, we often think of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and the iconic image of them marching together. So I wanted to share this quote as we prepare for the call to worship for Baruch Hu, where the Kabbalat Shabbat service is the receiving of Shabbat. Now we move into the evening service. Heschel said in 1970, prayer is meaningless unless it is subversive, unless it seeks to overthrow and to ruin the pyramids of callousness, hatred, opportunism, falsehoods. Prayer is meaningless unless it is subversive, unless it seeks to overthrow the pyramids of callousness, hatred, opportunism, and falsehood. So let's remember, we're here to experience comfort and connection, but we're here also to renew our souls for the purpose of. And prayer is here to remind us of our ultimate purpose, which is to take away hatred, callousness, opportunism, falsehoods from this world. So I pray that this Shabbat, our prayers will help strengthen us for exactly that task. So please rise in body or spirit for Baruch Hu. We're on page 28. And I'm going to invite you to unmute yourself if you're on Zoom and want to unmute for the responsive line so we can feel a little bit more connected. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamidim lo chalenu, leolam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai, hamariv aravim. And we have a beautiful poem about light for this blessing. I'm going to share. Blessed are you who bear the light. Feel free to read it along with me. Blessed are you who bear the light in unbearable times, who testify to its endurance amid the unendurable, who bear witness to its persistence when everything seems in shadow and grief. Blessed are you in whom the light lives, in whom the brightness blazes, your heart a chapel, an altar where in the deepest night can be seen the fire that shines forth in you, in unaccountable faith, in stubborn hope, in love that illumines every broken thing it finds. We turn to Avat Olam, page 32. And I'm going to weave some more quotes by Dr. King throughout. I thought this was appropriate as we give thanks for this gift of eternal love and values by which to live. Dr. King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." So that sense of interconnectedness as we lead into the Shema feels very relevant. We're on page 32. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shochveinu u'v'komeinu nasiach בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו, באורך ימינו, ובהם נהגה יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. יהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. We can unmute for Shema if you would like. Shema Yisrael, Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Turn to V'ahavta, please mute again. Turn to V'ahavta on page 36. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וכשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. So many people have noted how amazing it is that we remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on around the same time as we are reading this part of the book of Exodus every year. So, of course, the Exodus narrative is so central to who he was and his life's mission, and we carry that forward. So I was inspired to read through some of his speeches today, and I found a portion of his last speech on April 3rd, 1968, in which he actually said that if he was talking about, what a difficult time this was. And he said, if I had the opportunity to choose what age to live in, he says, he'd go from the fleeing from Egypt into the promised land, I'm paraphrasing, through Greece, the Roman Empire, the Civil War, into the Great Depression. And he would turn and say to the Almighty, if you would allow me to live just a few years in the second half of the 20th century, I would be happy. And he goes on to say, now that's a strange statement to make because the world is all messed up. And that made me think, wow, the more things change, the more they stay the same, huh? He said, the world is all messed up. The nation is sick. Trouble is in the land. Confusion all around. That's a strange statement, but I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. And I see God working in this period of the 20th century in a way that men, in some strange way, are responding. Something is happening in our world. The masses of people are rising up. And wherever they are assembled today, the cry is always the same. We want to be free. We want to be free. So with that kavanah, that intention, let's sing together our people's song of gratitude for freedom. Mi chamocha on page 40. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osei fele, nora tehilot osei fele. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים. זה אלי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Yai lai 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 lai, ya la la lai, ya la la lai, yai lai lai lai, yai la la lai lai lai, yai lai la lai lai, ya la lai lai la la lai, ya lai lai, yai lai, ya lai la la lai, yai lai. We'll turn to Hashkivenu, our lying down lullaby blessing. We're on page 42. We pray, may we lie down in peace. May we rise up to life. Another quote from Dr. King. I believe that the unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. I have the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. I believe that what self-centered men have torn down, men other-centered can build up. Men other-centered can build up. I still believe that we shall overcome. So when we pray that we lie down in peace and wake up to a new day, it's really a prayer that we wake up, that we have the zchut, that we have the merit to wake up, to do that work, to go with Dr. King and his deep belief. As he said, I refuse to accept the idea that the isness of man's present nature makes him morally incapable of reaching up for the eternal oughtness. that forever confronts him. So with that, Hashkivenu at the top of page 42. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Go to sleep tonight. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Go to sleep tonight. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Thank you, Idan. And thank you, Rabbi Jethro Berkman, for helping again so much to make our services more beautiful and musical. Let's weave that canopy of peace for ourselves and for one another. Let's sing that line, page 42. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. To remind ourselves to do just that. When I was with a group of kids recently on Zoom, and I invited them to give themselves a hug to remind themselves that we were all giving each other an embrace. So I think of this Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. God, please spread over us the canopy of your peace. In a way, we're motivating ourselves and reminding ourselves to create that, but really to embrace one another with our own canopy, maybe that's made of our arms and our love and our connection. Ufros aleinu sukat Baruch atah Adonai, Aporei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kol amo Yisrael, Ve'al Yerushalayim. So we're going to go into the Amidah. We'll chant the first words, God, open up my lips. And then I'm just going to give us some quiet time. It's traditional to recite the Amidah prayer silently in the evening. And if you have the book or the digital book and want to use the words, that's of course wonderful. And if you want, there's a lot of words. There's a lot of words coming at us all the time, a lot of words in this service. So I thought we'd make things a little bit quiet. And Jethro will accompany our silence with some music. You can always turn off your sound if you'd rather have quiet. And I really encourage us all to, even in that silence, to really feel connected to each other, to feel that our energy is very much together and very much making a virtual mishkan, a virtual holy space where that which transcends us can really dwell, and we can receive it. So let's try to boost each other up with that feeling in tonight's Amidah. We'll begin on page 46. If you can rise in body or spirit for this time of prayer, please do. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. We're going to turn to our prayer for peace. We're going to sing Shalom Rav this evening. Please continue if you're still davening silently. We'll be on page 62. 60, page 60, not 62. Shalom Rav, a great, abundant peace. Shalom Rav, al Yisrael amcha, tasim leolam. Shalom Rav, al Yisrael amcha, tasim leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha, tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha, tasim leolam. V'tov b'necha levarech et amcha Yisrael. Bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav omra al Israel amcha tasim leolam tasim leolam tasim leolam. Thank you, Idan. So we're going to have a chance to offer a new prayer for our country that I shared last week, and will be here on the screen, written by Rabbi Danielle Upton. And she wrote it as we were beginning the book of Exodus last week. And of course, we're beginning to move through the book of Exodus now, and this prayer feels very relevant. We, the people, one nation under God, turn to you, our protector, our rock and redeemer. Guide us through the exile of what this nation has become. A nation we no longer recognize, a time of darkness, plague, death, and distortion. Salvage truth who has become a stifled mute, drowning offshore in the shadows of Lady Liberty's torch. God of our ancestors, you once answered the agonized cry of an enslaved people, writhing under the hardship of tortuous taskmasters. You remembered them, performed miracles for them, and raised them up to be your people. God, who pierced through history with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, remember us. Bless us with your grace and saving power. Amidst the tumult of a teetering democracy, we cry out now. From the horror that is a land of fear dividing our country, we ask, Ad Matai, how much suffering is enough? This too is a prayer. We who had been standing on the precipice of a new beginning, a vaccine of hope, ask that you see us through to a life of peace, healing, and reconciliation for all. Hamakom, God of this place and of all places, our America is also holy ground. We have turned to see, but the fire is raging and consuming. Deliver us on eagle's wings, the symbol of this great nation. Hineni, we are ready. God above, protect our democracy and our ideals. Shelter our institutions and our nation's leaders. Free us, save us, redeem us, deliver us, and bring us to safety. And we all say, V'nomar, Amen. All right, so we are going to now have a chance to pray for healing. Of course, that prayer was also a healing prayer, healing for our nation. And I was thinking also about healing for those who experienced the violence in our Capitol building and who had to hide and barricade themselves, and the tremendous trauma that all of those lawmakers and other staff are experiencing, and all those who were really on the front lines of that violence. So I hold them very much in my heart and in my healing prayer, that they may have the resources they need to heal from that trauma, and may they know no more such trauma and fear. Please share in the chat, if you're able to do that, the names of those for whom you are praying for healing, and any kind of healing, of course. And if you're not able to use the chat, maybe try saying their names out loud, even if no one else can hear you. I think there's power in that. In our community, we pray for Linda Hoffman, Kate Bingham, Eileen Schwartz, Chava Esther, Bat Chaya Rochel, Sarah Robinson, Esther Neshama, Tammy Griffin, Richard and Margit Hershey, Judy Goldberg, and all those who are ill with coronavirus, including the more than 238,000 new cases that we had just yesterday. I see in the chat Sam from Mary and family. Liesel, Marcia, Allen, Susan, Myron Frommer, Martha Joy Aft, Betty M. We'll turn to page 253. Please feel free to continue to bring names for healing into the chat. Mi sheberach avotenu lekol habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu lekol habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. And let us say Amen. Okay. All right. So we're going to have a few moments for some more reflection on where we are in Torah. And there's one part of this week's Torah portion, Va'era, that really jumped out at me this week. And I think it will be resonant for you also. The Israelites at this point are really despairing. They're really despairing. And here God speaks to Moses and again sort of introduces God's self and says, I appeared to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob as El Shaddai. So I appeared to those folks by a certain name, El Shaddai, but I did not make myself known to them by my name Adonai. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. So there's that introduction. But then God says, I have now heard the moaning of the Israelites because the Egyptians are holding them in bondage. And I have remembered my covenant, the covenant I just told you about. Say therefore to the Israelite people, I am the Lord, I will free you from the labors of the Egyptians and deliver you from their bondage. So God is saying, I hear them, they're crying out. I remember I made a promise to their ancestors. So go to the Israelites and tell them, I will free you from this labor, this back-crushing, bone-crushing labor. I'm going to deliver you from bondage. I'll redeem you with an outstretched arm and through extraordinary chastisements. And I will take you to be my people. I will be your God. You'll know that I, the Lord, am your God, who freed you from the labors of the Egyptians, and I'll bring you into the land. So reiterating the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, so that sounds pretty good, right? It sounds like, well, that's great. Never fear. Don't worry. Never fear. I'm going to rescue you and bring you out. But the next verse tells us that when Moses told this to the Israelites, they wouldn't listen. They wouldn't listen. V'daber Moshe ken el bnei Yisrael v'lo sham'u el Moshe mikotzer ruach u'me'avoda kasha. They couldn't hear Moses because of kotzer ruach and avoda kasha. Kotzer ruach means literally shortness of breath. Ruach means breath, but it also means spirit. So I wanted to think about what that shortness of breath means and how it means that they could not hear. So hearing is really central to our tradition, right? Shema, hear, listen. The Israelites are so despondent right now that though this is a beautiful message of promise and hope, they simply cannot hear it. They've got a shortness of breath or a shortness of spirit. Their spirit and their breath is literally constricted. They don't have, I speak usually on Friday nights as we enter into Shabbat and about our openness to receive. They don't have openness to receive. They can't even hear. They can't receive hope. They can't remember hope. So it doesn't really matter to them. It doesn't matter if God made a promise to their ancestors. It can't bring them hope because of their present situation. They cannot see beyond their present situation. So a lot of our commentators have wondered about this kotzer ruach. What is this shortness of spirit? Or what is this kind of anguish? And I want to share just a couple of them, but just need to make sure my dog stops barking. So just 1 second. I'm back. All right. So what does this mean? I was looking at Rabbi Shefa Gold. And she picks up on this, as many, many commentators have. She's a contemporary rabbi. She says, they can't listen. The first challenge to listening is shortness of spirit, although it's sometimes translated as impatience. So her interpretation is that the process of liberation requires great patience and discipline to take the small, necessary steps that will not necessarily relieve our immediate pain. Resolute patience is required to fully rest in the present moment as it is. This full acceptance of what is awakens the power of our presence and allows the process of transformation to unfold. Only if we're patient and really living in the moment as it is, no matter how hard it is, can we be open to hope. Can we be open to the possibility of transformation and actually then allow the process of transformation of our world to unfold? She writes, here is the paradox. One must patiently be in order to become. So she translates kotzer ruach as not being patient, not able to accept what is in the moment. I have to be honest, I don't love that interpretation. I like to think that they were closed off, not impatient, but they were closed off. And I actually love that it uses a word that's for breath and for spirit, because we know, thanks to contemporary, well, ancient, but now kind of mainstreamed mindfulness practice, that our breath has a huge impact on what we're able to experience and what we're able to take in. When we're breathing shallowly, when we have kotzer ruach, in a literal sense, that our body and brain are so interconnected that when we're breathing shallowly, we have a different way. We are limited in what we can take in. So what if when we talk about breathing deep, as I always do at the beginning of Shabbat services, when we breathe deeply, maybe that actually allows us, even if we're in a moment where we can't see, it's so hard to see beyond where we are, and so much feels like it has frayed and torn, and so much that we thought was impermeable, impenetrable, symbolized by our Capitol building, so much that we thought was solid and unchangeable feels so vulnerable now. What if we really pay attention and make sure that we are not in a place of kotzer ruach, but we have to push ourselves to come to a place of deep and long and expansive breath rather than short breath. If we take on just a few minutes of deep breathing a day, could that in fact cultivate in us a sense of being able to open ourselves to the possibility of hope? Now, I'm not saying that we're all feeling hopeless. I hope that's not true. But I know that in the time in which we're living, it would certainly be natural for each of us to go sometimes into a place of despair. And I'm struck by this wisdom in the text that the Israelites couldn't hear. They couldn't hear this beautiful message of hope because, I imagine them with their heads down, working so hard physically, their breath very rapid and shallow. And maybe we might be so burdened with the weight of this pandemic and the weight of the vulnerability of our democracy that we too are breathing shallowly and we too have our heads down and our point of view narrowed. So I want us to really touch the wide expanse with our breath and remind ourselves that it exists. That promise that God made to the Israelites' ancestors, that promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob still exists, whether or not people in the present day can experience it or remember it. So what is it that we may be closed off from? What is it that may be existing beyond us, beyond our reach, beyond our sight, beyond our hearing, but there nonetheless, and that we need to deepen our breath in order to hear it and see it and remember it. And that's not just for our own comfort and our own peace of mind. Actually, to the contrary, I think it really is so that we can strengthen ourselves for the work and not be comfortable, but be able to do what all the quotes I was quoting from Dr. King were saying before, to do our work together, to manifest that hope in the world. So I realize we're running short on time. There's so many commentators, ancient and modern, that have picked up on why the Israelites didn't listen. And I really, I hope that maybe next time it's Va'era, I hope that we'll be, God willing, together and able to study together. And we'll look at some of those sources. But for now, all I want to leave you with is please breathe. Please breathe. If you find yourself watching the news, or you find yourself, I love this term, although it's kind of sad, doom scrolling. I don't know if any of you are guilty of doom scrolling, but that's when you're scrolling your phone or your computer screen as all the news breaks moment after moment. If you find yourself doing that and hunched over, think of the Israelites, hunched over, doing their work, oppressed, burdened, not able to look up, not able to remember the promise, not able to hear. So may we be blessed with the deepness of breath instead of being kotzer ruach, and the ability to take seriously the word Shema, listen, hear the promise, and believe that we can work our way towards its fulfillment. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And we're going to conclude starting with Aleinu on page 282, and the Aleinu prayer reminds us of our responsibility. And Dr. King, with his famous words, can lead us into this prayer, because this prayer asserts that would that everything that is praise the source of life, May we remember how together we really are, and may we remove these false divisions between us. Dr. King said, I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. Page 282, rise please in body or spirit. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגופי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. At this time, we recite Mourner's Kaddish. If you are, I know we have a few people here on the Zoom observing a yard site or a recent death, and if you'd like to unmute yourself and share the name of the person you're remembering, you're welcome to do that. And if you would rather write it in the chat, that is also completely fine. But go ahead if you have a name to share.
Alan Stark.
My grandmother.
Oh, go ahead.
My grandmother built this person.
My dear friend, Bobby Brooks.
My mother, Judy Kramer.
My father, Neil Spritz.
Jean's mother, Margit and Eva's colleague, Dr. Lisa Lerner, Lisa's friend, Greg Monahan, Sumner Smith, Sydney Scholar, and Josh Rosenzweig. From our community, we remember Peter Feldman, son of Doris and Saul Feldman, Sumner Chertok, father of Rachel Kalmus, Lillian Slater, aunt of Karen Landman. And we call to mind and to heart the impossible number of COVID deaths in our nation. And of course, we think of those throughout the world. But in our nation, we have lost 401,008 souls to date from the COVID-19 pandemic. May the memories of every one of these precious lives be a blessing. May we honor them in our words and in our deeds. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 294, and I offer my blessings of comfort to all who have recently lost loved ones or who are observing a yard site this evening. Again, page 294. And please rise if you are reciting Kaddish. Yitkadal veyitkadash shemei Rabbah. Bi'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute. B'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman koriv ve'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Ose shalom bimromav huyase shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. And I want to add my blessings of comfort to Susan Zeiger, remembering her dad, Herb, this evening. So, share just a couple of brief announcements. Tomorrow morning, I'll be leading along with Rabbi Schaefer and members of Shir Chadash, a service at 10:30 in the morning that will include a bit of Torah study. So I really hope you'll join us. And also, we still would welcome any reflections by any of you, either those of you on the Zoom, those of you watching from wherever you are. If you want to share anything as part of Shabbat services, a reflection on what a certain prayer means to you, like we do for Ma Gadlu, we'd really welcome other voices. If you don't want to speak in public, you can write it and we can share it for you. But just know that we're still thinking about that. And if you don't call us, we might call you. That's not a threat. No, I say that with love. We would just love to hear from you. And so I want to keep plugging that. We hope you'll lend your voice to our services. We're going to make Kiddush and Motzi. So if you have Kiddush and Motzi supplies, please join me. And we'll be on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron le'maaseh v'reshit, ki hu yom techila lemikraei kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'acharta, v'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabat kodshecha, b'ahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. We are going to close tonight with the same song, the same video that we used last week, because I can't get enough of it, and it just feels like it becomes more relevant each week. And I want to, preface it by quoting Dr. King one last time. Let us rise up tonight with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination, and let us move on in these powerful days, these days of challenge to make America what it ought to be. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And with that, we hear Batia Levine and members of Hadar's Rising Song Institute with We Rise.
We rise, humbly hearted rise, won't be divided rise, with spirit to guide us rise, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here, in a hope, in prayer, we're right here, in a hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. children rise. Elders with wisdom rise. Ancestors surround us rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here, and we rise up from the wreckage. Rise with tears and with courage. Rise fighting for life. We rise in hope, in prayer. We find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here, and we rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise.
All right. So everyone is welcome to stay and say hello. We'll cut the live stream.